Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Espinosa. I am the Technical Customer Success Manager with Ask Sage. Welcome to our Ask Sage Hangouts. Today, we'll be covering and going over the UI of Ask Sage, what we provide to our customers out of the box. But before we do that, I'm going to share with y'all something just to go over what we're going to cover, right? So, quick overview. We're going to be covering the UI, right? How to tailor Ask Sage today for your use cases. Feature Spotlight, again, it's all to do with our UI, what's out of the box. Uncover the what is it, explainability feature using our live function, defining a persona, and then setting up, a prompt template and seeing that we already have a lot of prompt templates set up for users to use, and then creating a data set and then highlighting different plugins and agents we have on the platform. Overall, we do plan this to be like a 1 hour session. Going to go over everything I just highlighted, but then leave room for questions at the end. But of course, during the presentation, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. And as those questions come in, we'll highlight them on the screen. We also encourage users to, again, ask the questions, but if you haven't signed up, please go to what is it, AskSage.ai, and then try now, and then you'll be able to use our platform. Okay, let's see. So before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and actually make this just larger so everyone can see it. So this is our website. Again, like I just mentioned, try now so you can go and register if you haven't. Some quick areas I want to highlight before actually getting into the platform is make sure to follow us on LinkedIn, follow Nick, but also follow Ask Sage. Our team is posting posts all the time of just unique, what is it called, tricks you can do on Ask Sage. And as we do feature updates, it's always great to follow us here to see what's going on. So now we'll get into the platform. So as a whole, anytime you log in, this is the first thing you see. You see this pop up, right? And in this pop up, you'll see essentially quickly, a lot of people have questions like, hey, do you have any training documentation or do you have any videos? Well, Nick and the team have created a bunch of videos that here you can watch today on YouTube. And so we have a playlist that you can watch going over all the different features. Uh, on top of that, we also have documentation. So now, if you have any questions on how Ask Sage works, what documentation we have, you can go here and start interacting with this documentation page and understand how the platform works. And note that if you have any key terms that you have, so like for example, a data set, define a data set, you can go exactly to where that is within our documentation. So that's essentially what you'll find here. A lot of people ask us like, what are our capabilities? Well, really, our capabilities are almost anything to do with generative AI. You have the capability of building your use cases on top of as Sage, but also using our platform to streamline things and start working with generative AI today. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but just wanted to highlight that. What models do we have on our platform? Again, we're agnostic. So we provide you access to all the latest and greatest models, a lot of the open source models that are also at the peak. But note that if you don't see a model on here that you are not interested, or you have a model that's not on here that you're interested in, we can host it. We're agnostic on that end. The only thing is there might be additional costs with that. And again, you can just ask our sales team. And one last thing I want to highlight here is just the commands. So a lot of people ask us, hey, how do we delete a data set or how do we check our data sets? Well, this is a way of doing it. You can see different commands on here on training and a bunch of other commands on here. So people forget that this is here. So now into Ask Sage. So I'm going to zoom in. This is another thing I quickly wanted to highlight real quick. Depending on how you set up your web browser, you can zoom in to get a better view of our platform. So you can see now that I'm going to go over like the basics, right? And so with their UI is here we have our prompt window. This is where you ask your questions. And here on the top is you have your inference window where you get your responses from Ask Sage, right? As I mentioned earlier, we're agnostic. So here, GPT-4 Auto, this is actually a feature we have here where depending on your question, Ask Sage will select the best model for you based on that question. But if you are more familiar with generative AI, you can go ahead and select a model of your choice. So right now, I just selected GPT-4o, but I also wanted to highlight real quick that if you notice there's an asterisk here, so these asterisks are indication that these are CUI compliant. Any of the models on here that don't have the asterisk are not CUI compliant. But if it's an open source model, it can be CUI compliant. It's just there'd be additional costs with hosting it on the right tenant. So wanted to highlight that. So now we've selected a model, right? And now we have the capability of defining persona. So whenever a user starts interacting with generative AI, they always interact with it in a very like chat-like behavior and necessarily not going to its real capabilities, right? And so what we always recommend users to do is you need to learn how to tailor the model. And so you do that with the persona. So here we have out of the box, provide users with all these different personas that they can use for particular scopes, right? For example, I'm a contracting officer. I want to make sure that my model takes on the persona of a contracting officer. Or I am a developer, DevSecOps engineer. I want to make sure it takes on the persona of a DevSecOps engineer. But even more than that, right? We provide this out of the box, but the great capability that we have within Ask Sage is individuals are then able to create their own personas, right? So if you don't have on here what you need, or you want to customize it a little bit more, you can create your own persona. So you can name, describe, and then a system prompt, right? And then we give you kind of an example of what that looks like. And so you can go ahead and start typing, what your persona is. So as an example, I already have set up some examples of, what a persona would look like. So here, for example, I made one of a GenAI expert. This one's supposed to describe a persona that's someone with an AI experience of 15 years. They know artificial intelligence, machine learning, but they have a characteristics of a professor and are able to explain and provide feedback step by step, and also provide code to snippet when they're explaining things, right? And so when you define a system prompt, know that this prompt is going to go with each uh, prompt I ask. So let's do a quick demonstration of this. So we're going to go ahead and select Ask Sage, and I'm going to ask, what is Gen AI, right? And so what Ask Sage is doing essentially is I'm asking a question and it's using that particular prompt and it gives it to me in this format. But if I have a particular use case, right, I can select my own Gen AI expert persona, and we're going to go ahead and re-ask this question. But the difference is now I'm tailoring it to a particular persona. And it's processing. And the only reason it's taking a little bit longer is because the persona, I asked it to explain in detail to give me a response as if you're a professor and breaking things down, right? So you can see a clear distinction on how to leverage generative AI beyond just a simple chatbot, but defining a persona. So that's something that AskSage provides out of the box, right? Additionally, with this prompt, one thing we've already embedded within our platform is a lot of people struggle with creating prompts, right? Asking the right question, knowing how. We've embedded within our platform follow-on questions, right? And so let's say you're learning how to use generative AI or you don't know what to ask next. You can always click on one of these suggestion questions you can follow up with. So essentially, Ask Sage not only gives you a response, but then gives you what you might be thinking of asking next, and you can consecutively continue to ask those questions. And it does the same thing, and again, gives me a response. So wanted to highlight that. As I'm asking these questions, right? We just covered, you can select any model, select a persona, you get those subsequent questions. One thing we always want to highlight as well is when you're asking questions about a particular topic, don't ever mix and match your chat with multiple topics, because then there's going to be issues and the models focus on what's being discussed. So we always recommend starting a new chat. So here on the left hand side, now you see I have my chat history, so I can always go back and review what I asked previously. But now that I'm starting a new topic, I'm going to go ahead and start a new chat. So now that we've discussed that, we're going to go into prompts, right? So the main thing with generative AI that we like to always mention is there's kind of three basic rules. Is one is you have to be clear and concise on what you want to ask or what you want the model to provide you with an answer. So make sure to be clear. To give time for the model to think, right? So when it's giving you its response, give it some time and it will generate the response you want. And three is just trust but verify, right? So you want to review the responses that you get from the model. So here with Ask Sage, not only do we provide you a preset list of personas, but we also provide you a preset list of prompts, right? And so this is fantastic because you can use these prompts both as a training source, and knowing how to write a clear and concise prompt, right? And so these are already out of the box. And the great thing too is whenever personas set, you can assign a prompt to particular persona. So here, for example, I'm going to filter my personas to DevSecOps engineer. And let's
Hey,
see.
Mark, just a second. Joseph had a question. I'd like you to take a look here. He's interested in how Asage could interact with his own bot within his existing ChatOps platform in Platform One, and how would the token compute work if they use Asage via some backend connection. So I'm going to answer that one quick. So Joseph, the way we would recommend doing this is via the API. We have a .mil API endpoint at R5, so you could tap that. And the tokens, you could do a bot, and that's where Mark shows you the API keys there. You could create an API key for that bot, and then you could assign tokens to that API key and cap it to make sure it doesn't consume too much if you wanted to do that. And that would be probably the easiest way to do it at Impact Level 5. If you were 4 or Impact Level 2, you could use our .ai endpoint as well. So know that the .mail endpoint is behind the kneecap, so it's on the DoD IP. So, and then there was another question before you keep moving on from Alan, was asking how is the session memory handled? Do you want to answer that, or you want me to do it?
I can do it. So a session is handled within each chat. So anytime you're interfacing with Ask Sage, know that all of your chat history within this chat is going to be used within essentially this chat. So
yeah, and I think what he's worried about is more about the if the data goes into the model. So to be clear, every model is set up as the fire and forget API, so they don't retain your data, particularly the CI model. So when you see a CI compliant, the models are not retaining the data. We send the history with every follow up when we do the query. So the data is only retained on the Ask Sage side and not inside of the models. So you have no risk of your data being used or the models being trained on your data. And I guess Joseph was saying we have 10,000 user in our team, so scoping the amount of computer when user begin typing would be important to estimate potential costs. Yeah, absolutely. We're doing $150,000, 150,000 user engagement now. It depends also if you are 4 or 5, because R4 you have access to GPT-4o Mini, and 4 Mini is 120 times cheaper, so that would be a huge difference. Also, we would set up the responses to be capped, so you don't have maybe 10 pages responses, but just like maybe 2-3 lines. So you have settings in the API to limit the consumption. And then, of course, if you're not passing a bunch of files, you also save a bunch of tokens. So it's just something we can talk about if you want to reach out to us. And yeah, compute. Yeah, I understood. Sorry. And so shoot us an email. I'll put the email here, and then we can talk a little bit more to. And R4, I would go, since you're R4, I would go with 4o Mini, because that's way cheaper. So it's 120 times cheaper. So, and that's the email for you to reach out to us. And then someone was asking, is the fire and forget API described in a wiki or document? Is it in the documentation, Mark, or not yet?
not yet, but I can add it. So
yeah, we'll add that. We have it in our ATO package, to be clear. So that's what's been already audited and pen tested, and that's why we got DoD 5 from this Army, Air Force, and now we got also a FedRAMP High ATO as well. So that's been pen tested and assessed already. And Tom was asking, one of the limitation of other LLM platform is the inability to search through the chat histories. For instance, all chats that reference DevSecOps. So you want to, yeah, that's a good feature. So Tom is asking if we can add a search feature on the chat history. Can you write that down, Mark, and we'll add it. Tom, we release 5 times a day, so we'll add this to the backlog, and you should have it within a couple of weeks at best. So that's a good idea. I never thought about it. Shouldn't be too hard to do. All right, we'll let you get back to the, but I'll pause every once in a while to make sure we take the questions, because I want it to be interactive. We have about 50 people on LinkedIn now, and 50 on YouTube. So a lot of great feedback. So thank you.
Awesome. So as Nick was mentioning right now, what not just the asterisk shows that a model's CUI compliant. So here I have like GP240, and I was showing it while he was talking. But if I click like the Anthropic models, you can see not CUI compliant. So that's a quick indication to a user of whether or not they're using a CUI compliant model. So so as I was mentioning, right, we have these prompt lists, right? So this is great for initial onboarding, but as users get more involved with Ask Sage and start building out their use cases, they're going to start, not crawling but running, right? So they're going to start implementing and creating their own prompts. So here, for example, I created some just proof of concept prompts. So like here, I have one for analyzing images. The only caveat is I have to make sure to select a model that can actually analyze or review an image. So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to select a image just to show you how this works. And we're going to select this one so you can see like a humanoid person and then an actual person, right? So we're going to ingest it here and we're going to provide it. So essentially, like the utilization of prompt templates and customizing that for your end is great, especially when you have a repetitive task, right? So you don't want to continuously ask this question, do an analysis, or get a expected response. And it does that here as shown on the screen, right? So it reviewed the image instantaneously. What's also fantastic, it identified the humanoid robot, not two people, right? And it identified a person and it gave me a description based on my response or what I wanted from the prompt. Another prompt I set up here just also for demonstration is sometimes I do a lot of reading on research papers, especially to keep up with what's going on with the generative AI or just machine learning. And so here, this one is, I want you to review the paper, provide me the title of the article, first and last name, and I can go ahead also, again, attach a research article. So this is about a 26-page paper, and I'm going to have it basically ingest it. And no, when I ingest or attach a document to this prompt window, it's only for this particular prompt. This is not ingesting into a data set. We'll show that towards the end of this stream. So let it go. And as I mentioned, the reason or like the second rule I mentioned is like just give time for the model to think and digest the information is because it's doing all the processing, right? And so it basically gave me what I wanted, right? So it gave me the title of the article, the first author, last author, highlights, but then I wanted it to give me the 5 main takeaways in a CSV, and I can download this just by clicking on this button and review it. So that's one of the great capabilities. And again, it's just by defining what your use case is, you'll start developing different prompts as your use case is built, and then leverage that even further. And so here I have one else or something else like for DevSecOps, like what is a VLAN or something. People can ask questions, and again, Sage can be used in many, many areas as both training new personnel, and if you point this to a data set, but essentially here it broke down what VLAN is, how to use it, use cases, memory aids, and so forth. So it's a great tool in many different aspects, right? So now we have discussed the prompts, and then what I also now want to get into is showing the utilization of data sets, right? So in the chat, I do want to ask the audience, what is the significance of using a data set, right? And people can post in the chat, what is the significance of using a data set? And I'm going to demo why it's important to do so.
Mark, we have a couple of questions, so let's take that quick. So Joseph, my friend from that used to be at the CDAO and now doing great on the commercial side, is asking if our offering is going to be available as a join a DoD-wide service. So the chat.asage.mail is going to be a DoD-wide tenant, so anyone can use it. So that's pretty exciting. And that's the one that just got the DoD the DISA L5 PA. So that's good news. Sam was asking, sometimes he sees SH stop in the middle of the response. So that usually means that you went beyond the token window of the model and you don't have enough room for the answer. And so it has to stop. So I think it's very important to watch our video on context window that we released I'm not sure if you're going to cover that today. Probably not, Mark. I think it's going to be a different session. So Sam, we're going to do an invite specific to context window and how to pay attention to how much token you're consuming to make sure that the model has enough brain to answer and give you the full proper response. And that's pretty complex to explain. It's almost its own session. So stay tuned on that, because it's probably the biggest problem that people don't understand, which ties directly back to Quinn's question here, where he had issues when he was ingesting documents, getting Sage to find sections of a document. So in that video, we also explain, and I'm going to try to find the link so I can put it on the chat here. But we have tried to explain how, when you ingest a file, the bot reads the plain text of that file and then cuts it into chunks. So sections may not be kept intact into the same section. We cut it by end of sentences or written carrier or stuff like that. So it's pretty complex, right, to make sure that it fits inside of the models, and then we can do semantic search on top of it. So if you wanted ready to do a better way to do extract sections would be to attach the file to a prompt, assuming the file is under 300 pages for GPT-4o. And then you should do that, because if you put it into a data set, the file is cut into chunks, and then you don't know which chunks are going to be returned to the bot based on your semantic search. It might be the right stuff, but it might also be cut at the wrong spot, and now it's not going to have the entire text. So keep in mind, when you ingest into data set, it's cut into chunks, and then we use semantic search to return the right sections of the file. But you may miss some of them, so it's just better to attach the file to the prompt. Alan, we already have O1 and O1 mini, but it's on the, do you want to show them on the list? It's right there. So it's already there. It's been there the same day as it was released, but it's not on the Azure OpenAI Fabric, so it's not CUI compliant. So keep that in mind. And let me put the link to the new video we just did here on the chat. Here we go. Meta just posted it already. So it's right here. Cool. So did you have another question you wanted to ask the audience, Mark? I forgot what you were saying.
I was just asking why it's important to use the data set. So if the audience knows.
And I guess we have another question. So Scott was asking, is it possible to create a CUI data set with a logging in with a CAC and PIV? Yes. So if you have a user that does not have a CAC and PIV, but they are authorized for CUI, the company has to reach out to us and tell us that that user is indeed capable of handling CUI and give us that information. And then we can activate MFA on their account. And there's a special setting we can activate to enable CUI on that one account. So that's totally fine, but it's only for companies and not government people. So if you have an employee that does not have a CAC or PIV, but they have the right to access CUI, we can activate that on a per user basis. So just shoot us an email at support@assage.ai and say, hey, this user can read CUI. Here's his email. Activate his MFA CUI access, and then we can toggle that, and then he can read CUI. Will those answers be kept in the FAQ? Yeah, we're starting to do an FAQ, and it's also going to be on the docs website. So we're going to try to capture all this. And, we're kind of struggling because we're doing so many of these sessions. But yes, the goal is to be able to do that. We're also working on new videos to try to make it easier and more simple. So stay tuned for that as well. All right, back to you, Mark.
So I don't see any responses on the question I had on why data sets are important, but I'll go ahead and demonstrate on why that is and also explain it throughout the process. So here I'm going to ask a question like, how can you provide details on how to care for a patient that has burn wounds in a prolonged field care scenario, right? And so the reason I'm asking this question is, one, I'm familiar with the topic, but two, I have a data set associated with this. So I'm just asking it out of the fly, what is the process of doing this, right? And so imagine any use case you have. So here, it provided me a response, what potentially is needed. But what's bad about using generative AI in this fashion is it could give you inconsistent results, right? You want it to have the capability of referencing your data set, your source of truth, and what you know is true, right? And so you leveraging a data set, not only will you have uh, a source of truth, but then you also get to see what Asage truly provides of high value, which is our explainability feature. So I'm going to edit this again. Can you provide details on how to care for a patient who has burn wounds and prolonged field care scenario? So I'm going to go to my advanced, right? So we have our advanced features, and you can see data collections, and you can see our live and temperature, but we're going to focus on here right now. So here you can see all the data sets. We have some that are standard just here out of the box, but those are mainly for examples. But when you start developing your own use cases, you can develop your own data sets. So here, I'm gonna go ahead and ask a question. So I'm gonna ask basically the same question, right? And I should essentially receive an explainability of how to do this process in a prolonged field care. And again, it's just taking a little bit longer just as it's going through the information or in my data set. So let's go ahead. And note that anytime I ask a question with a specific data set, I do see it at the bottom of the UI. So always pay attention to that. And now you see here, right? So now we get another response, right? But it's based on a joint trauma system clinical practice guideline, right? And say you're in the, what is it? You're part of JTS and you make these documentations and you're working with soldiers who do this. But essentially, it provided me that response. It gave me a CSV of how, like, here's a summary table for quick reference. And additionally, it got this information from my data set. And here, essentially, what's key, what I want to highlight is it shows me the file name, right? So burn management PFC from January 2017. So it's the file name PDF and what page number it came from. And so essentially, that's why it's important to curate, data sets for your particular scenarios. If not, you're going to get information, one, that can be wrong. And realistically, when it comes to customers, right, if you can fully work with models and just ask a question and get your response back with like workflows that are like IP related, there's a data leak somewhere, right? And so that's where data sets are important to curate and manage. Um, and with Sage, essentially, you can create your own data set. So how do we do that, right? So you can upload new files. Essentially, we have this interface here, so you can create a new data set. So let's just label it test, Mark, Sage 101. Actually, this is that. Let's create data set. So now this data set is created, right? And then you see here what type of files can be added or ingested into Sage. And note that these limits are based on the file, not the entire data set size. So here, I'm going to go ahead and drop some files. And the only thing that matters is, again, making sure that we can actually ingest the file on there. We have everything that can be. So for example, I'm going to upload a PDF. Let's just bring this over. CSV, Excel. Let's do these three. And last but not least, let's add an image, right? And so now here in this basically UI, right, we've created a data set, forgot to select it. Let's select it real quick. So test, Mark, Sage. And as Nick mentioned, this is going to be ingested and it's going to be break off in your context, but it does a really great job in ingesting all this information. And so we're going to go ahead and ingest these files. So what's great about this UI is you selected them from your computer, you've added them here, and you still have the option to remove any files you don't want ingested, right? And so now you can see these have been added. And so, and this one's going to probably take a little bit longer just because it's a larger document. And note that you can go away and close this, and it's going to continue uploading. So when you select the data set, you can select it here, but note you can also select more than one. So if I created 2 different data sets, I can use it to ask questions. What's also a great feature, and some of this is going to be updating in the future, is you can see what your data sources are within a data set. But what's also cool is you can copy files. So let's say I wanted to copy, you see this one, I want to copy the file, or wait, go down here. So I need to select the data set I want to copy it to. So let's do test mark, copy it. So what's great is now that file that I've trained on right once has been copied to another one, or it's getting copied right now. So essentially, once you've ingested it into one data set, you can also mix and match with other data sets as needed. So we see that. And okay, so one thing I also wanted to highlight is whenever you create these data sets, right, is not only are they accessible to you, but you can make them accessible to your teammates. So if you're under the same enterprise slash organization, you can share them amongst your team. The only caveat is you have to let us know that, you know, the person you want to work with is under your organization, and we'll add them underneath there. So if I created this data set, and let's say I wanted to share this with Nick, we have the commands here. So as I mentioned earlier, and then you can share a data set with someone. So let's see, data set. Let's see.
And
Assign.
just someone reached out with a question. They were asking, if you have a team and you want to share a data set, can you do that? And yes, not only when you have an enterprise account, you can have admin accounts, so you can have as many admin accounts as you need. So if you have, 200 people, 100 people, you can have 5, 10, 20 admins. And then each user in the same organization can share data set between users, so then they can see each other research as well. So
yeah.
And then Tim had a question here. All the ingested files stored as vectors embeddings? Yes, they are.
Yeah, and we don't actually keep any files, so know that everything is translated to a vector embedding, and essentially you can manage it using the UI that I just showed. So manage data sets, and basically you're managing your own vector database. And so the caveat though is we get a lot of questions like, well, how do we know? How do we manage this? You can manage this using this, and note if a document gets outdated, you just have to replace it with the new version. So there's that. So we've gone over, you can select your data sets, you can upload, manage. Now we're going to go over another feature we have here. Note this is only available on the .ai version, not the .mil, which is our live feature. So a lot of people use this in case they just want to do a quick research on, what's going on within, the internet or like the industry. And so here, for example, I'm going to select live or live plus. I'm gonna go with live plus, which is it pulls the first 10
Just
results.
the .mil has the live feature now, so
Oh, it does. Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
we just got it approved. So
Awesome. So so that's great. So now with the live feature, what you can do with it is you basically Nick described it to me once and I laughed. It's it teaches people how to Google, right? Or how to ask a question, right? So live plus, I'm gonna go ahead and add it here. And I'm not going to select the data set because I just want it to go online and search on how to do something. So here I'm going to ask you a basic question. So what, I'm going to do something else too. Software developer, select the right persona. And then I'm going to ask you a question, how can I create a API with AWS? So this is a basic question. I could ask generative AI to give me a response just with this question without using Live Plus, but using the Live Plus, it adds me the additional context extraction from online, and it provides me these links that I can click on. So right click, open it. And so now what AskSage is doing, it's going towards this link, right? So it did a web search, and now it's reviewing all the context in here. Um, Something I should have mentioned also when I was describing the data sets is whenever you ingest a file, it's not ingest uh, depending on the file, right? So if you're ingesting a PDF, if there's images within the PDF, you have to ingest those independently. So it's only going to analyze the context or the text. The images have to, what is it, put independently. And here's the same thing where it's just reviewing all the text on the website. And so now what it's doing is it's gone through that website, it's going through the second one, and it's going to give me a curated response based on that context. So now this is another way to fight hallucinations, right? So instead of just asking AskSage on, what is this, it's going to go and pull information from an AWS website based on a Bing search, which is this one, create an API with AWS, and it gives me a full response.
Yeah, and by the way, the reason why it's a little bit slower recently is you're using GPT-4o, and the demand of GPT-4o is through the roof, particularly on the FedRAMP high region. So, it's part of the pain of growth. We just got our DoDR5 ATO, and the demand is just insane. So, Microsoft is spinning up more GPUs, but, you're going to have to be a little bit more patient, I guess.
It's still faster than what I could do normally by myself, right? And in a couple hours. So, but overall though, is as you can see this response, right? It provided me a clear response, used those sources, and then broke it down, provided me source code. And again, that has to do also with the persona I selected. I'm pretty sure just the AskSage persona would probably provide me source code as well, but it wouldn't have done it in this style. And so now you see again where it pulled the information using the explainability feature. So let's see. All right, so that's our live, and I want to see what else I have. So then we have our temperature. This is based on creativity, depending on what you're doing. Some people adjust this. I typically leave it at 0 because it gives you the highest probability of response that a human would, more likely give you. But then 1 is, you want to be very creative, right? So, but I usually don't play with it. Some people do. So there's that, and let's see. So we've gone over all the data collection, live, temperature. I'm gonna cover a few more things, and then I'll leave some room for some more questions. So here on the chat window, you can share, as I mentioned, with people within your same organization or enterprise. You can edit the name, so I can change the name on this in case I don't ever want this deleted, right? So AskSage, don't delete, or something, or I just want to go back to it at some time. So you can rename these and you can copy the entire chat. So here we see all of this on here. But let's say I did a like 30, 40 subsequent like prompts, right? All within one chat window. Well, you can copy the entire chat history using this button. Additionally, here on was it within your inference window, you can copy the context for each independent response using these 3 buttons. So like copy raw, copy clean, and copy raw is just going to give it to you in in markdown language, right? So there's that. What else? Let's see. Another thing that we are continuously working on is mermaid diagrams. So currently, AskSage does have the capability of rendering some mermaid diagrams. So let's see, provide me with a mock mermaid diagram. Let's see, pie chart. So there's one mistake I made, and this is on me. Essentially, I forgot to turn off the live feature. But anytime you're using the live feature or anything,
I make the same mistake all the time.
don't forget to turn it off. So go ahead.
Yeah, and the mermaid feature is pretty cool because so you should refresh the page and I'll wait. But the mermaid feature is pretty cool because you can, let's say you have a CSV or something, and then you want to say, create a pie chart of that CSV. They do it in 2 seconds. It's pretty cool. So here we go.
And then I can open Mermaid Preview. Oh, this is the flow chart. Again, we're iterating this and making improvements on it, but essentially,
Yeah, Flow Mini is not too great at it, by the way. So
let's see, let's redo this.
And because you tell it to mock, I stopped doing that. Yeah, so this one is gonna work. Yeah, here we go. You can tell the difference of models. It's interesting because Mini, the way they made it, Mini is removing a lot of stuff, right? So obviously not as good. So a little bit faster, but and cheaper.
Yeah. And we're also adding more capability using just the mermaid.js library. So it's open source, but essentially being able to use that not only to create charts, but Gantt charts, flow charts, and people can use this to quickly create something. So I've used it throughout my whole career, and so it's a great way of representing something. Then I'll usually give it to my graphic designer to make it cleaner or nicer. So, but it's a great quick way to show flows and whatnot. But that's basically it that we wanted to show this time around. But we did want to follow up. People can leave a question or answer this question, essentially what you all want to see in upcoming events.
I think the next one is going to be context window for sure. That's probably the most asked topic, so we want to dig into that a lot, and I'll be there to help as well. But I think after that, we'll love to get your thoughts on what else we should talk about. Do we want to dig into software, coding? We just did a software one. Do you want to dig into acquisition? We're doing a Karasoft event with Karasoft on acquisition contracting. So what else you want to dig into? That would be good to know.
Absolutely. And if anyone has any use cases, they can send it to us, email it to us, and then try to present one of them. So the next one we'll do for sure context window, go over some of our plugins for coding and how to use these and overall. And then as these sessions continue, we do want to cover our other great tool, which is NA-Box. So that's something we'll cover later, but this is a little bit more complicated and probably will need like several sessions for this, but it's a great tool to quickly automate the creation of documentations. And I know Nick has a great video on YouTube going over this. So we'll cover that. And let's see. And that's basically it. I don't know if there's any more questions anyone has.
No, we don't have other questions. I think it was great session. Mark, thank you so much for all the great documentation you're writing and helping us, make this a better user experience every day. So I wanted to thank you again. Adam was asking, I guess, a question about Impact Level 6. We can do it. We just don't have a sponsor and someone willing to fund the work. So until someone decides to do that, unfortunately, we can't do it by ourselves. So we need a government sponsor and someone with some money to be able to pay for the cost of the hosting. So that's where we are now 6 or 7. But wanted to thank everybody. If you have more questions, shoot us a note at support@sh.ai. Join us on Discord. You show them the link, I guess, what to go to, how to find Discord on the top right over there.
Or I can
in the welcome menu.
Oh, there's
it's in the app. Yeah.
Yeah, there's several locations. So you can join Discord using this link here, or you can go within our platform help and join Discord here.
Yeah. Orchestration of bots would be a nice video. Yeah, that's interesting. We can talk about that. Very cool, guys. Thank you so much again for joining us. We'll keep pushing. We're releasing 5 times a day, new features. Pushing the ATOs across all the entire government. So I wanted to thank you again for your support. Like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to us at support@sh.ai. And Mark, I'm going to leave the last words to you.
No, thank you everyone for showing up. And again, if anyone has any questions, let us know. Sign up if you haven't already. Right now is the time to get started. This is really growing fast, and I do believe it has huge value to everyone. So
And I just lied. There's a new question. So yes, we can deploy in air gapped. So impact level 5 is technically air gapped. So yes, it's not a problem. We can deploy dedicated tenants of Sage anywhere. In fact, inside of customer tenants, we have one, with Navy, with one with DHA. We have one with Army, BAE. You name it. So totally possible. Not a problem. So. All right. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Speak to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.